Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming here on this Saturday evening to hear about a topic which is so close to my heart, which is princely India and princely Bombay. Just to give you a brief background about myself, I am the co-founder of livehistoryindia.com, which is India's largest digital platform on Indian history. And you see, the whole idea behind this talk and why we started Live History India was because Indian history is all about stories. They're not about dead buildings. It is not about just facts and figures and dates and all of that. It is all about stories, and that is what connects us with history. Because you see, when we are going when we are studying these facts and figures, and so many of these personalities of history, you realize that they're going through similar situations, and they're going through, I mean, you can really relate to them, and that is what makes history so interesting. So before I begin, please do check out livehistoryindia.com. Beginning with
Hi Akshay, sorry, I'm just cutting you in. There are a couple of people who are requesting you to be a little louder.
Okay.
So if you can just be a little louder, that will be helpful.
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Please put the mic close to your mouth.
Yeah. Is this better? Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So our audience, we have two types of people. One who are from Bombay and who know about Bombay, and the others, the second group is people who are interested in princely history but have not been here or would like to know more about it. Now, for those who don't know, like places like, say, a Nepean Road or a Kambala Hill, or haven't been to Bombay, I would like to say that, I have divided this presentation into stories, and I will try to make it, as explanatory, as fun, as interesting as it can be. For people from Bombay, the reason I really want to tell this story is that, Bombay today is such an ugly city. I mean, it's very unfortunate. And now, with the coastal road, we're going to lose whatever beauty we had. But there was a time when it was not like that. Bombay was a very nice city. And I'm not just saying for the elite. Even a immigrant from, say, a Konkan or something could live in a wadi and lived a really nice life. So, so I just want you to look at these areas differently, look at these places differently. And so with this, I begin my story of the princely Mumbai. Hidden within the city are some really beautiful buildings with some really interesting history, which I'll be talking about. Now, I have divided the first two stories, which I'm going to tell you about, are from the distant past, which is Mumbai's earliest princely connection. Now, in 2016, discovery of a stone in the BARC campus threw a light on Mumbai's lost kingdom. Now, most of us think that it was British who built Mumbai. But this stone, what we are seeing in 2016, Mumbai University was doing this wonderful Salsit project, and they deciphered the inscription, and what it said. And this, what we think of Mumbai's history is very different from what we have been taught in school. We have studied that, the Catherine of Braganza, in marriage, Bombay was given as dowry, Bombay became a city. But this stone, this interesting, mysterious stone, tells the story of perhaps Mumbai's first royal family. Interesting clues to this lost royal family can be found outside Mahim police station. Now, if you go to Mahim, in these narrow gullies, you pass by the police station. It is a police station like no other. You can see these very ancient sculptures which have been found, and they're just put out there and nicely displayed between the pillars and all. Not only this, I was seeing an interview of the CEO of Mumbai Metro, and she's, in one of her interviews said about how while the excavating for Mumbai Metro in Mahim, she had discovered a 13th century Surya idol. So now that brings, us to the question: why are these beautiful fragments of a very distant past being found in Mahim? What is there in Mahim of all the places? The answer to that we get thanks to this very interesting gentleman called D.K. Rajwade. He was a Maharashtrian historian, and sometime in the early 1900s, he discovered a manuscript, which which was a Marathi manuscript transcribed from the Portuguese, which was all before that transcribed from again a Marathi manuscript. And this manuscript was he called it Mahikavati Bakhar, or the story of Mahim. This is such an interesting document. It's a story of a dynasty known as a Bimba Dynasty. A Bakhar is a ballad which tells you the story of the past kings and the dynasties long gone by. And it has very interesting references to the kingdom of Mahim. Now, what this kingdom it tells us is that before the advent of the British, the Bakhar says that there was this king of Patan called Raja Bimbadev, who came with his followers. He settled down first in Keve Mahim in Thane, and from there he moved to and the route is written. So how he came to the Valkeshwar temple. Later, they shifted the capital from Thane to the island of Mahim. Now, if you actually see, if you can see my cursor, why Mahim? It's a very interesting point. So if you actually see this map of Bombay, you can see, it is nicely protected from the open seas. It has a lot of flat land for cultivation. It has access, to the points in the north. You can, from here through the Bay of Mahim, the ships went back into the sea. So this was a very suitable island for settling. And I mean, for the longest time, people thought that, this is just a very interesting tale, like a ballad, like some Mandaran Kahani, as you say, somebody's imagination or something like that. But the facts in this are so interesting. I think, it should just be, it's like a movie. Like, for example, it says that sometime in the 1448, so there was a kingdom. The king was at Mahim. There was the Desai, or the governor of Malad. There was the governor of Marol, and and how they used to fight against the king of Thane. And what is so mind-blowing about this is, like for example, just to give you one example, I always thought Are was a very modern name, or a Juhu, or a Khar. But all these, Bhanduk, Mulund, all these fascinating places in Mumbai are mentioned as they are in the Mahikavati Bakhar, which was perhaps, sometime compiled in like either 1368, or some say it was 1448, between that range. So just think of it, when Alauddin Khilji was ruling Delhi, when the Byzantine emperor was ruling Constantinople, Are was Are, Juhu was Juhu, Khar was Khar. And then, there are these fascinating stories about, for example, the Battle of Juhu, the Battle of Khar. There is one more very interesting story on this evil minister, and he's supposed to be like this dictator of the kingdom of Mahim, and he's in love with a married woman from the governor of Malad's family, and then he tries to kidnap her, but she escapes to Bhiwandi. Then and she's pregnant, and then this son is born, and then he vows revenge for his mother's dishonor, like perceived dishonor. and then how he grows up and he assassinates the minister on the mud island. And I keep thinking, wow, I mean, I'm really surprised why anybody hasn't made a TV series or a Netflix on it. But if you are, I mean, Live History India is happy to help. Just to give you the sense of where the first palace of Mumbai may have been. This is how the Mahim. I mean, it's a bit more British map what I'm showing you, but interestingly, there are references that Prabha Devi was the Kul Devi of the Rajas, and the palace was somewhere near Prabha Devi. But I feel I don't think it can be true, because it is high, because in those times most of what is today Dadar, Shivaji Park, Prabha Devi and all was something known as Mahim Woods or the Mahim Jungle. So it is highly unlikely that a king would have built a palace there. This is how the a Mahim perhaps would have looked from the neighboring islands of Mumbai, where there are the flat seas, coconut groves and rice fields and all of that, and then beyond which was like a very to be very honest, these so-called royals of Mahim were chieftains, like local chieftains who paid tribute to the Yadavas of Devgiri and different dynasties and all. So Mahim was like this important trading center which came. Now this is very sadly the today's shot of the Mahim fort. So if you can see, this is the Mahim fort, and this would have all in those days. I mean, this would have been where the the court would have been, the houses would have been, and all of that. And then this is where you see this is all reclaimed land. I mean, the ships would have gone all the way back to where the Mahim at the back, and the port of Mahim would have been here. Trading with it used to trade with Arabia, because a lot of the Arab merchants settled here. Who were known as Jamatis, the Jamati community, which settled in Mahim. So these were the Arab traders. It had a settlement of the Arabs. Now, one very interesting thing, when Portuguese were going to fight the Sultan of Gujarat, they halted in the island of Mahim. And that is what got me thinking, that this whole thing that, Mumbai was not important before the advent of the British, or the advent, you do not stop with a large navy at a very insignificant coastal place. You always, and this is where the ambassadors of Gujarat were received by the Portuguese fleet. So this tells you that Mahim was important, place with its own royalty, with its own court and all of that. And I have a theory that there is a very popular. This is the Prabha Devi. This is the goddess of those medieval kings of Mahim. But I have a theory that Mahim police station might have a very deep and interesting connection with the earlier royals. And because the fact is, first, it's its location. Generally, the palaces were always located just outside the Mahim fort. And you see a place in, like, if you see a lot of historical places in India.
You'll have to log out and log in again.
A place, a sthan always has an importance. It is, if you see Delhi, for centuries, the Mehrauli area or something was the seat of power. And there is a very interesting connection with this building, which says that it was the house of the famous Sufi saint, and so on and so forth. And also this place, this Mahim police station, and later the British came, has always has been a position of authority in Mahim. And the fact that a lot of the idols, rare murtis were found here, that gives you a clue that, maybe I mean, this is a speculation, but depending, on different, once you put two and two together, this is, you realize that maybe this could be a place where, the first palace of Mumbai could have been. And it would have been something like this, like a large Konkani house with a, because in those days, even if you go to Konkan, a lot of the nobility, the chieftains and all of that would have seen he lived in houses like this. I mean, maybe it was just a bigger thing with more number of rooms or something like that. But this is how Mumbai's first palace of a lost dynasty would have looked like. The second story is connected with a murder in Shaniwar Wada. Shaniwar Wada in Pune was the seat of the Peshwa Empire. But on 30th August 1773, on the Anant Chaturdashi day, one of the most auspicious days of for the Maharashtrians, a group of assassins, and these were the chief of the palace guard, they go into the palace and they assassinate the Peshwa, Narayan Rao. Narayan Rao is the grandson of this guy who we see, is the grandson of Peshwa Bajirao and Kashi, his first wife, Kashi Bai. He was just 18 years old. There was a huge outcry in the Pune Darbar, what had happened. Maharji Sindhya and all the great nobles, were shocked at what had happened, and they ran an investigation. Now, we think that, these assassinations used to take place in those days, and that there used to be no police or it was not like that, So there was a proper investigation bureau, an investigation commission put up, and they found that the chief assassin was none other than this guy who's, pretending to save him, but this is his uncle. This is his uncle, the second son of Peshwa Bajirao and Kashibai. And now this is quite interesting because he hoped that if his nephew got murdered, he would get to become the king. But the people of Pune were so shocked by this horrific act that everybody got together, like Nana Fadnes and everybody. So this is Raghunath Rao Peshwa. And they decided to go after him. And in fact, he was sentenced to death. But before that, he escaped to the British. Now, the British thought that this is a very good time to interfere in the affairs of the Maratha Empire. The Maratha Empire, now this is just after, this is few years after maybe 10 years, this is 10 years after the Battle of Panipat. But the Maratha power was at its height. This is when, it was right up till Haryana and, till Tanjore in the south, and, position of great power and all. Raghunath Rao, what he decided was that he thought he will join hands with the British. So he comes to Surat and he signs the Treaty of Surat with the British. Now, why do the most important thing, the British interest was, they wanted the Salsette Island, what is today's Bandra to till Thane, the Thane and Vasai area. They wanted Vasai and they wanted Thane. They thought it was a great idea to interfere in the affairs of the Maratha Empire. And then what happens is the Bombay government signs a treaty with the Raghunath Rao, and Raghunath Rao says, I'm going to give you these things. But the Pune government, the Calcutta government is not happy about it, and they say, you know what, just get this guy out, get him to Bombay, give him a pension, let him stay in Bombay. So Raghunath Rao Peshwa, one of the great, I think he was one of the great warriors of the Maratha Empire. He arrives in Bombay. These are his rivals and in the Pune court, and he settles down in Varli. And there is a reference that in 1776 he came to Varli and he stayed here for around 6 to 7 months. He was given a pension of around 16,000 rupees, and he stayed here. Now, what is interesting is that if you actually see, he would have stayed somewhere. It says he lived on Varli Hill, but the interesting part is he would not have lived in Koliwada, and he would have perhaps lived just outside Koliwada. And then you see this British structure which is there, which is a British time fortification, a firing range and all. And in all probability, this was the hill, Varli Hill, which is referred to in the British papers. There would have been a Maratha style Wada here where he would have lived and all. Now, what happened was the British got thrashed in the first Anglo-Maratha war, and Raghunath Rao realized that, and he didn't like living in Bombay. So then, he went to Kopargaon and the Ahmednagar and stayed there. He passed away. And then his son became ironically, later his son became the last Peshwa. So this is the second connection with Bombay city. After that, what happens is Bombay becomes, the trade and commerce starts growing in Bombay. It is no longer just a British trading town. And this is, I'm talking about 1850s onwards, where a lot of trade and commerce and cotton and all of that is happening. And with the opening of the Suez Canal, this is the easiest place for anybody going from Bombay to London. This is the port of call. And now we see a lot of royalty and princes coming to Bombay. So so the first two stories were the earlier connections, the old ancient, like the early medieval connections with the Bombay city. And now we come to the modern princely connection to Bombay. Now, one very interesting fact that people don't know is that Kohinoor was in Bombay for some time. It may be one of the most famous guests to leave Bombay. After the Sikh War, when in 1849 the Sikh Empire was annexed, the British took. This is the Prince Maharaja Dilip Singh, who was a minor, and this is his mother. And they were, taken prisoners and made British pensioners. And the diamond was formally declared, the property of the East India Company and taken to London as a gift for Queen Victoria, as a spoil of war. They were very clear about it, that it was not some that Maharaja Dilip Singh is gifting. It is a spoil of war. We have won Punjab and we're going to take it to London. So on 1st February 1850, Kohinoor arrived in a lovely steel box. It says it was a red velvet box in which which was kept in a steel safe, and it arrived on 1st February 1850. It was kept in the Bombay Castle with heavy security, and on 6th April 1850, it departed for London, and where it was presented to Queen Victoria, and where it remains till this day. The two are, Bombay also has a connection to two other, two of its former owners. This is Rani Jindal, and this is Maharaja Dalip Singh. Rani Jindal, after a very difficult life in imprisonment in India, managed to reach London and meet her son. He was a child. He was quite young when he was taken in London, and he was living in London, where he became a Christian, a member of the British Society, godson of Queen Victoria, entertaining princes and all of that. And sadly, when she died, her body was brought to Bombay, and they wanted to take her to Punjab, but she was cremated in Nashik, in Panchavati, where her samadhi was created. And her son, in fact, 1886, he wanted to come to Bombay. He had become a Christian, and he wanted to have a ceremony in which he would re-embrace Sikhism. Sadly, he could never make it. His ship came to Aden, he was stopped there, and he was sent back. And it's a very tragic tale. And he passed away in England, and they could never make it. So Kohinoor has an interesting connection with Bombay city. This is 1880s and 1860s to 1880s. During the time, Bombay, as it started getting visitors, the Watsons was one of the finest hotels in Bombay city. But the problem was the British that did not allow Indians to come there. So the rich and elite Indians had no place to. They were not allowed here to. There was no entertainment, and the royalty, could not come into these great British hotels like Watsons and all. Now, interestingly, there is this building right next to Crawford Market called Sardar Gruha. So this is what I call, this was the Taj before the Taj. This was in what in those times was known as Hindu hotels. So if you were, for the Orthodox Hindu community, this was like a perfect place to stay. So if Raja Saab of Jangkhandi wants, to stay in or the Maharaja of Kolhapur wants to stay in a very nice, accommodation with, proper food and all of that. I mean, this is where the royalty would have stayed before the Taj. And it is also known for, the place where the famous Lokmanya Tilak passed away. Then what happened was, there was the Taj Mahal Hotel and the Wellington Sports Club. I mean, these became the watering grounds for Indian royalty and Maharajas, known for fabulous parties. This is where they began to gather. And it is mostly around 1920s onwards that we see a lot of princely involvement in Bombay. Then what starts to happen is that a lot of the Maharajas and rulers are buying so much of Bombay properties that the British Raj puts a ban on princes from buying property in India. So what they do is they do what any good Indian or a smart Indian would do. They start buying Benami, like through shell companies or in somebody else's name. And then, finally by 1940s, the British were so annoyed that they decided, no, let the princes buy property, but it has to be in their name. Now, one of the earliest princes to buy properties in India was the Nizam of Hyderabad. And it has a very interesting connection with the Jacob diamond has a very interesting connection with Bombay as well. So before I go on to the next slide, I mean, all those who think that Kohinoor should come back to India, I mean, please, I mean, I would request you to look at this slide. I mean, last year when it was when the Indian government displayed the Jacob diamond, they put it on a bed of nails. I mean, that just shows the state of heritage in our country right now. It is so sad. So now, this is the map of the Hyderabad state, which was the largest princely state in India. And this was Mehboob Ali Pasha, who was considered one of the richest men in the world at the time. And he was the one who bought the Hyderabad estate in Bombay. And there is some very interesting stories about Mehboob Ali Pasha that, he loved collecting things. He was very large-hearted. He's known as the beloved in Hyderabad. And I really want all of you to see this picture. This is so fascinating because I have heard stories. I mean, there are a lot of stories of in whole Hyderabad about how Mehboob Ali Pasha used to dress up like a very ordinary poor man and go into the bazaars and listen to the problems of the people. And I just discovered this image some day back. There was an exhibition in Hyderabad, and it just validates some of these most fantastic stories from history and from the past. So this was Mehboob Ali Pasha, a large-hearted man, loved everything big, loved jewelry, loved spectacular, he's the one who acquired Falaknuma, he's the one who acquired a lot of palaces of Hyderabad, what we see, the most exquisite of Nizam's treasures and all. So he was ruling Hyderabad, and when he acquired Malabar Hill, this is on the other side of Malabar Hill, but even this is the Valkeshwar side, but even the Nepean Sea Road would have been something like this, where there would have been just slopes of jungle, and then, as you see, a house or two houses on top of it. So he acquired 9 acres of land. Maybe it was the most valuable princely property in Bombay, and he acquired it from Sir Kawasji Jahangir, which is known as the Nepean Trust property. This is how the map looks today. So when you come from the Nepean Sea Road, this is a huge estate that you see. I'll show you more maps. It was interestingly, the Nizams, unlike the other royals, they did not build very, very big mansions and houses outside Hyderabad. So the houses in Bombay were like series of these cottages and all. It is very strange. I have searched in Hyderabad, my contacts in Hyderabad, even the book The Palaces of Nizam, there is no photo available of these Nizam bungalows in Hyderabad. Thankfully, I have got a map of Bombay in 1918 map of Bombay, which shows how the complex would have looked like. This is how this must have been the main house. This the Zanana Mahal, for the queens, so it was just a collection of large cottages which existed there at the time. Now coming to the Jacob drama, the man who was behind, who wanted to sell the Jacob. So the man after whom the Jacob diamond is named is Alexander Malcolm Jacob. He was a very mysterious guy. Nobody knows where he came from. Nobody knows, very little is known about him. And some say he was a spy, some say he was an adventurer. He had an antique shop in Shimla. And he heard that this big diamond, which was then known as an imperial diamond, it's quite a large diamond. Alexander Malcolm Jacob and this guy known as Abid, who's the Nizam's butler, he decides that, you know what, we are going to make a lot of money off the Nizam. So what they decide is they get so Abid tells Jacob that, you know what, you don't worry, I will handle everything. You just get the diamond to India. And the diamond is brought to India. He makes the down payment of 21 lakh rupees, in 1890s. And he puts all his money, he takes loans and all of that, and he brings it to Bombay. The diamond arrives in Bombay. It is shipped to Bombay. But the interesting thing, what happens is, in the Hyderabad court, there was a tradition that the Nizam never asked for anything for money. So it used to be brought in the darbar on whatever it was. And he used to just utter one word, either pasand, I like it, or na pasand, I don't like it. Now, Abid had told Jacob that I will do all the setting, you just get the diamond, and I'll make sure that the Nizam will say pasand. It is, in a grand ceremony, the diamond is brought, it is placed before him. Mehboob Ali Pasha takes the diamond in his hand, looks at it, and much to Jacob's horror, says, na pasand. What follows is, Jacob just loses it. He files a case in the Calcutta court. He hires every top lawyer in India because, so much of money is at stake. The case goes back and forth, and Nizam, to avoid the scandal, buys the diamond. But Jacob's reputation is ruined because now no prince wants to deal anything with him. So Jacob, a broken man, financially destroyed, he comes to Bombay. And if you can see this building, the Waterloo Mansion, this is where he lived in his last days, and he was buried in the Shivdi Cemetery. It is very interesting. My friend John Zubruski has written a book called Mysterious Mr. Jacob. You must read it if you can. And he writes about how the Jacob always eluded him. And 1 month before John was going to go to Shivdi Cemetery, Jacob's grave was removed, and fresh graves were put in place, and also he missed that as well. And so then what happens is, this diamond, because it has, everybody in Hyderabad starts talking that this is a Manhoos diamond and we don't want anything to do with it. And the Nizam, they don't put it in their crown, they don't put it in the necklace. After independence, the Nizam, this guy who's Mehboob Ali Pasha's son, who fights against the Sardar Patel and all, and Hyderabad is taken over by the Indian government. He packs the Jacob diamond with all his jewelry, and it is placed in the HSBC, the vaults of the HSBC Bank at Flora Fountain, where they remained till 1994. They were the Jacob diamond and all the jewelry was acquired by the Indian government, and it is now in Delhi on a bed of nails. But till it was in Bombay, I can say that Jacob diamond was very well kept. This is unfortunately, the Hyderabad estate today. It's just government flats and all of that. The next story is equally interesting. It is about the kingdom of Baroda, which is a kingdom to the north of Bombay. And many Maharajas have very interesting connections with the city. And again, a lot of diamonds, a lot of pearls, a lot of sapphires, and those kind of things. But now these, if you can see, these are the two famous diamonds. They are known as Star of the South and Akbar Shah and English Dresden. These are three famous ones. They also came to Bombay because, see, Bombay was the port of call. So all the diamonds and all the fabulous things of the Maharajas came to Bombay. And I know this because there are a lot of custom exemption papers, in the Bombay archives, that Maharaja of so-and-so requests that, he wants to buy this diamond. So can the government of India please, in the Bombay customs, please, this thing. This is the guy who brought those diamonds to Bombay. There is a very interesting description of about how it went to Baroda. Those big diamonds were taken in a state procession through the Baroda city, and put in the temple of the deity Khandoba, who was their state deity, and then set in that beautiful necklace that we see. This guy who bought these diamonds also made a very important contribution to Bombay city. This is the Alfred Sailor's home, and it was built for rupees 3.67 lakhs, out of which more than half of the money was paid by Maharaja Khande Rao. What happened was Maharaja Khande Rao passed away, and his brother became the Maharaja after him. There is a very interesting incident which happens in 1875. The British representative, who was known as the resident in the Baroda court, accuses the Maharaja of trying to kill him by putting crushed diamonds in his orange juice, which he had for breakfast. The trial happened in the Bombay court, and Maharaja Mallarao Gaikwad was deposed. He was removed from the Gadi. I personally think he was framed because he was a big supporter of Indian freedom movement. He was secretly supporting Indian freedom fighters and all. And there was no evidence found that he is the one who tried to assassinate the British resident. But it is one of the most interesting trials of the Bombay High Court. He was succeeded by Maharaja Sir Sayajirao Gaikwad, one of the most enlightened Maharajas in India. And Maharaja Sayajirao, very westernized, loved socializing. He had a very strong links with the political leadership of Bombay and all. And he is the one who built this beautiful palace called the Jai Mahal in Bombay. It was just above the Hyderabad house, and it overlooked the sea. It was on top of Malabar Hill. Quite a beautiful, considered one of the most beautiful houses in Bombay ever built. It was said that it had a double-storied Darbar hall, which was there. Again, can you see this? This is the old map line which I found. You can see this Nepean Sea, the Nizam's estate, and just above it is the Baroda Palace. And then these are the stepped gardens which were there, and there's some very beautiful description of hairpin bends with waterfalls and beautiful trees as you ascended up the Malabar Hill. This is just a map to show where the estate is today. I mean, unfortunately, not very nice, but this gives you an idea. This is the Nepean Sea Road, and this you can see is the Shimla house, where this was the palace where it was, and this was the terraced gardens where there's this Jal Darshan building now, and this is where the Hyderabad estate was. So this, and somebody has who was writing in 1940s is this beautiful description of Malabar Hill at night, and where he says that here was the Nizam's palace and here was the Baroda palace, and they looked like two floating, like two lighted, lit palaces floating in the air. So that was interesting. Now this is where Sayajirao Gaikwad, Maharaja Sayajirao Gaikwad, is the main patron of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar. He calls him Dr. Ambedkar calls him the architect of my destiny. And the first time they met was at the Jai Mahal. And again, there is a very interesting description about You see, Dr. Ambedkar was belonged to the Dalit caste. He would never have been, as a young Dalit boy, he would never have been allowed inside a palace to meet the Maharaja to request a scholarship. So he knew that every day Maharaja in his buggy went for an evening drive along the Nepean Sea Road. So every day this boy used to be standing outside the palace gate. And one day, then, like after 4 or 5 days, Maharaja stopped his buggy and, he said, okay, what do you want and all. And he said, I want my scholarship. And, that's how history was made by the gate of Jai Mahal on Nepean Sea Road. And, you sometimes wonder, how India's destiny would have been different had they two not met and, things shaped up for them. Maharaja Sirajirao Gaikwad passed away in 1939 and was succeeded by his grandson, Maharaja Sir Pratap Singh Rao Gaikwad. He was the last of the big spenders. He loved races, he loved parties, and for the second time, as his second wife, he took Maharani Sitadevi. In my personal opinion, I think she was the most classy and the most glamorous Maharani in India, but there was a problem. Maharani Sitadevi was a divorcee, which was a no-no for 1940s India. She had been married to M.R. Appa Rao. She was a princess of Pithapuram from Andhra Pradesh, and she was married to a big zamindar from Andhra Pradesh. But, the Cupid struck, and she took a divorce. And, by Hindu law, a woman could not divorce. So she converted to Islam. And in the same evening, she, through Arya Samaj, became a Hindu again and married the Maharaja. And it just created a sensation across India. I mean, she was considered the Scarlet Woman. I mean, Maharaja's first wife, and the family created a lot of problems for her. The Indian government was not willing to accept her. So basically, I think, but she was a very smart lady. I mean, she was not going to let the Indian government or the Maharaja's family get to her and all. So what happens is, in 1940, the Indian government is putting pressure on the Maharaja to disown Maharani Sitadevi and, take away all her jewelry and a lot of stuff which was given to her. So she's very smart. What she does is, so there is a report, I mean, it is very strange. This is from a very respected British newspaper, that in 1949, a plane flew from Bombay, which was Juhu Airport, it was packed with Baroda jewels. And for some strange reason, there was a leopard in the bathroom. Like, they flew with a pet leopard. And not only this, the Maharaja's Dakota, I mean, this is just a Dakota which I put, also has a fascinating description. It had what they call a sitting room, a bedroom, a bathroom, a cocktail bar, and this is how it would look like. So I mean, I just imagine. And with it went the jewels of Baroda and of the Maharani and of the Maharaja to Europe. The Maharani lived a very glamorous life in Europe. Sadly, she passed away in 1986. Her son predeceased her, but her jewels are the talk of the town even today. I mean, even internationally, when people think of Baroda, I think they think of Sitadevi. And so she lived there. Now, it's so ironic. I think she, for the most glamorous Maharani in India, her most strangest connection to Bombay is this. So this is the Shimla Nagar slums on top of Malabar Hill, and this land is priceless. I mean, this is like 4 acres of land on top of the Malabar Hill. I mean, every politician must be eyeing this. So, this is the Shimla house, which is the Baroda Palace. And next to that were these open lands, which were gifted by the Maharaja to Sita Devi's name. And when she went to Europe in the 60s and all, I mean, the slum dwellers just took over the land. But it's still in her name. And what I know is that, a lot of prominent builders and politicians and all want to do, eyeing it. But yeah, so the Queen and a Mumbai slum. Baroda also had other buildings in Bombay, such as, the Kamal Mahal and Shangri-La on Carmichael Road. And these two beautiful, then beautiful. This is Chateau Windsor next to Churchgate and Chateau Marine on Marine Drive. Now we come to Mr. A. Now, who was in news the last year when Article 370 was abrogated? So, who was Mr. A, and how is his link to Kashmir Sapphire? This is the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. There is a reason why I'm explaining this Mr. A case. Maharaja Hari Singh of Kashmir, when growing up, grew up in the Mubarak Mandi Palace. It was a very, old style palace and all of that. And he had to face a lot of palace intrigues. His aunt and his uncle tried to murder him and all of that. So, and he was also involved in a blackmail case by his British ADC in 1930s London. He was having an affair with a woman, and this ADC was blackmailing him. And in the British, to hide his name, the case went to the British courts, and the British government wanted to protect his name, so he was well known as Mr. A in England, and unfortunately the name stuck. So he faced a lot of intrigues and all in his life, and that is why it created a dislike for big palaces and big mansions for him. He would become friends with a man named Victor Rosenthal, who was also a very interesting character. And the reason was, you see these pearl strings which he's wearing? This was how he connected. Because Maharaja Hari Singh was a passionate collector of pearls, and Mr. Victor Rosenthal, I think this is the only known photo of Victor Rosenthal available. A French Jewish gem dealer who was known as the Pearl King of Paris. He controlled the pearl markets of Paris at the time. And during the Second World War, Victor Rosenthal came to Bombay. If you can see this Carmichael Road, this was the first Kashmir house here. And, right next to this, unfortunately, I couldn't, because of the lockdown, get to the picture, but there is this cliff bungalow on the other side of the road, which was a Chinese consulate. That is where Victor Rosenthal lived. Because 6 months every year, Victor Rosenthal used to come to Bombay and Kashmir and live with the Maharaja. Later, Maharaja Hari Singh built this a block of flats called Kashmir House, 19 Nepean Sea Road, where he lived on the penthouse. The building is still there. It is known as Sanghi House. And every year, when in winters, when it was very cold in Kashmir, he used to come down to Bombay. What is so interesting is Victor Rosenthal, during his Bombay days and all, tried to capture the sapphire mines of Kashmir. It was with a Muslim, like a old Kashmiri family, and it was known only to them. And in the Kishtwar valleys, somewhere, they say it was a sliver of sapphire, emerging out of the mountains, and it was known only to them. It was kept a secret. Now, what he did was, he told, using his Maharaja's influence, he got the contract for the mine. And when he went, after a 2-day trek from Srinagar in the mountains to take possession of the mines, he was shocked that Kashmiri family had dynamited the whole mountain, and there was no trace of those spectacular sapphire mines. So now, there are some Padar mines by the government of Kashmir, but I don't think these are the same old mines which in the 1940s and 1930s they wanted. So it's a very interesting thing. Maharaja and Victor Rosenthal lived in Srinagar, and it is very interesting that when the Kabilis and the invaders from Pakistan attacked Kashmir, Maharaja Hari Singh had to, in the end of the night, he had to flee. He had to flee Kashmir, and Victor Rosenthal was driving the car. I'm sorry, we're running a bit late, but I'll try to hurry up because we already we've done a lot in this. The third princely connection, which is a very interesting story, is it's related to a murder on Malabar Hill, and it's related to this palace. Now, this is one of the most famous colleges in Mumbai. It is the indoor palace called the Sophia College, and it was once a palace, and a palace of a Maharaja who was embroiled in a murder case. Now, this is the lady I mean, there was an attempt to murder for this case. Now, this was the what you call femme fatale. I mean, the lady because of whom the murder happened. She was the favorite courtesan of Maharaja Tukojirao Holkar of Indore. This gentleman was a very good ruler and all of that, and she lived in a palace with him. And what happened was, one day she just ran away from the palace with the jewelry, and she had a lover in Bombay called Abdul Qadir Bawla, and she wanted to become an actress. So, which in this new medium of films, which was coming in at the time. So she ran away one day. The Maharaja got quite upset, and then what happened was, this is the Indore state, if you can see here. And this is the palace, beautiful Lal Bagh Palace in Indore, where she ran away from. Now, this is, I mean, all of us recognize this Kemp's Corner, and this is the road which goes up. I mean, it's a one-way now, so you can only come down to Kemp's Corner, but this was the road which went up to the Malabar Hill. So one day, Mumtaz Begum and her lover were going up the hill. A group of men tried to, kidnap, or 12th January 1925, tried to kidnap her. There was a what we call hatapai with her lover tried to resist it and all, and in that skirmish he got shot dead. And there was a huge scandal. It is one of the most sensational cases of 1930s Mumbai. There was an investigation commission, and Maharaja was forced to abdicate. Thankfully, I mean. And interestingly, Maharaja's lawyer was Muhammad Ali Jinnah, of all the people. I mean, it is so interesting. He lived in Indore. He married an American lady. But unfortunately, the stain of the murder always, I mean, it is always placed on him. Now, you see, this is my problem with history. We never do first-hand research. We always regurgitate what we have known before. So, even recently, a very prominent national daily published a column on this Bawla murder a few months back, and it is the same thing. Oh, the Maharaja committed the murder. This. But if you just go, I have seen the files in the National Archives of India, and if you see the testimony, the mastermind behind the murder was this lady. This is Maharaja's wife, and even that Mumtaz Begum says, this Maharani Indira Bai hated me and she wanted revenge. The British Commission files right, the conspiracy took place, under the influence of the Maharani and all of that. So funnily, I mean, like a lot of period dramas, it was the wife who framed the husband for the mistress's attempted murder. So it's a very interesting story. The palace, I mean, what happened was, because it generated so much of negative publicity, the Holkars did not want anything to do with this palace. They sold it soon after the murder. And it was first sold to the Maharaja of Bhavnagar, who in turn in 1940 sold it to the Catholic, the missionaries, who made it into a girls' college. But it's really funny that once where the courtesans danced and there were mehfils and all of that is a very puritanical convent, run by convent nuns, girls only college. I'll just brush up through this. The next great palace was that of Maharaja Madhavrao Scindia of Gwalior. Now, Maharaja Madhavrao Scindia of Gwalior discovered an enormous treasure from his father when he died. But he was a very smart investor and a smart businessman. So with the help of Sir F.E. Dinshaw, he invested all those property, all that money into Bombay. And so, for example, people don't know that Madhavrao Scindia bought 1 crore worth of, when the IPO of Tata Steel happened in, like, I think 1918 or something like that, he bought 1 crore worth of shares. Not only this, he was one of the biggest players in the Bombay Stock Exchange. And, I mean, I have seen papers, this chap sitting in Gwalior in 1918 was investing in Brazil and investing in Canadian Railway and those kind of things. So very interesting man. And he used to keep coming to Bombay, and that is why the Scindias acquired the biggest estate which was there. It was a 20-acre compound called Samudra Mahal. And this is the photograph of Samudra Mahal, which was sadly demolished in the 1980s. I'll show you more photographs. This is the another thing of the Samudra Mahal. Another view of the Samudra Mahal. It was up the hill, just on the other side of Haji Ali. This is the grand gateway, and this is the layout. So this is where Haji Ali is. This is that the blue colored dome Dargah is, and you can see the palace, the guest house, and how it must have been. So it just gives you a overview. It was Maharani Vijayaraja Scindia who sold it for an absolute pittance in the 1960s. Now, there are very interesting stories why she sold it. I mean, some say it was bad luck, some say she wanted money. The story goes that it was sold for 40 lakhs. I mean, can you imagine? It was a 4 crore property, and she sold it for 40 lakhs. It's unbelievable. It was demolished, and a lot of these buildings have come up. Now, one very interesting thing about that whole bad luck thing is that, a lot of people have stayed here and it's not been good for them. So, for example, Harshad Mehta, the famous, who was involved in the scam, stayed here. Rajan Pillai, the Britannia king who died a very sad death in the Tihar jail, he stayed here. Rana Kapoor, Yes Bank, right now with all this thing, he stayed here. And Nirav Modi, who's in the news for the scam, he stayed here. So, this building which you see is where Praful Patel, who was also in trouble, stayed. So, this whole complex, the claim, I mean, maybe the real estate guys will not like me saying this, but there is a whisper that this place has very bad energies and, not very good things happen here. The Scindias had other properties in Bombay and almost 400 acres in Thane. The most interesting, for example, Cafe Britannia in Ballard Estate and Cafe Mondegar building. Both these buildings were Scindia properties. And okay, so now I come to Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj. Very interesting. He was a king of the princely state of Kolhapur, the biggest descendants of Chhatrapati Shivaji, and a great social reformer. And because he was so close to the whole, he was the person who started the first reservations in India. He helped women's education. He was, they call him Raj Rishi, the king, the saint king. And he used to keep coming to Bombay. And unfortunately, he passed away in Bombay. And after him, his son bought a beautiful residence, which I want to show you. This is, where the Haji Ali Juice Center is, and just next to Haji Ali Juice Center, where you have these the petrol pump and those buildings. That is where the Kolhapur Palace was. It was just a British building, nothing very opulent, a very colonial type structure. But what I also like about this photograph is, please look at it carefully. There is no Haji Ali Dargah. This is 1918. And you don't see, you just see a grave here. There is no Haji Ali Dargah to be seen in this photograph. And I'm showing you, this is the Hirapanna, and this is where the road goes, and this is where the palace was. And just to show you, this is Haji Ali, and this is where the Kolhapur Palace of the Chhatrapatis of Kolhapur, Chhatrapati Shivaji's descendants used to have a palace here, these buildings. And okay, now we come to the biggest and the grandest and the most opulent, I think, it always surprises me. Now, Bansda is a state of 185 square miles. It is in the Dang forest. It is called Bansda because it's bamboo forest. It's somewhere near Valsad. And surprisingly, for a state that size, they built one of the grandest residences in Mumbai. So can you see here? This is Bansda. And this is the palace in Banzda. They were these it reminds you of the Chateau de Fontainebleau in Paris. I mean, they were lovers of architecture and lovers of good things in life and all of that. And they built, so this is Anand Bhavan. Anybody of you going to Beach Candy and all, you will see this monumental building with you can see the coat of arms of the Banzda royal family here and all. It was with the family till 1960s. And I'm just showing you the view on the other side. They had a huge swimming pool with a beautiful palace. And it was one of the grandest residences in Bombay. The next one, right next to it, was the Maharaja Sahib of Vankaner. Vankaner, you know, I mean, people don't know, but Vankaner was quite a wealthy state because of its strategic location. It came on a trade route. It is near Rajkot. And so because it was on a trade route, they collected a lot of money through customs and all of that, which gave them a great deal of fortune. And Maharana Sir Amar Singh built this beautiful Vankaner house in Bombay. And I think it's it is the most famous princely house in Bombay because it was the American consulate. It was known as Vankaner House and Lincoln House. It has been bought by Poonawalla recently. And thankfully, it is one of the beautiful and surviving buildings here. And you know, something which few people don't know is this Amar building. You know, the Reserve Bank of India started from Amar building, and Amar building also was built by Maharaja Amar Singh of Vankaner, and which again, you know, I mean, it was sold in the 1960s. And so this is another very interesting royal connection with the Reserve Bank of India. We come to Kutch. Kutch also, you know, Kutch had a very interesting connection with Bombay because a lot of Kutchi merchants, not only the Bohris, Khojas, Bhatiyas, and a lot of the Kutchi community, because Kutch was such an arid place, had come and settled in Bombay. So they had a very close connection with Bombay city. Maharao Khengarji built this beautiful Kutch castle just opposite Opera House. And what makes this building so interesting is it is built in the shape of a ship. And this would have been the Maharao's penthouse. And you would just see chapati, you know, from the penthouse. You would just see a beautiful chapati on the other side. Now, his son, Maharao Vijay Singh Ji, built the Darya Mahal. This is Nepean Sea Road. This was the Kutch Palace. It was built by the famous Parsi architect Sir Sorabji Bhedwar, and it had a very beautiful, you know, it had its own like a private beach off Nepean Sea Road and all. In the 1960s, it was sold to the Mittal builders who built these. Can you see these Darya Mahal towers? So where the beautiful beach and the lawns are these towers. But thankfully, they converted this building into a school, and that has prevented it from being demolished. And it's still there. It's quite a beautiful sandstone structure. They also had beach bungalows, you know. So they had a beach bungalow where Sun and Sand Hotel is in Juhu, because Juhu was a place where a lot of the princes went to have fun and let their hair down. It was like, you know, it is what Alibag is there today. You would have a beach bungalow and all. And in fact, you know, even Gwalior and Kutch had 7, you know, out of the famous 7 bungalows area in Warsaw, one belonged to Kutch and one belonged to Gwalior. They bought it from the Parsi owners, but it was with them. Beyond which, you know, one of the most famous buildings, what we see is on the Pedder Road, and it belonged to the African origin kings of this spectacular fortress, the Nawabs of Janjira. This is the Bella Teresa School on Pedder Road, and it was once the Janjira Palace. Now, if you actually see, one very interesting thing is that, you know, this is the church where the church is now, and if you actually see, it's a very Islamic-looking Indo-Saracenic structure in which they've just put this sloped roof and this thing to make it look like a church, but this is a beautiful Janjira Palace. And this is the Nawab's original palace. So if you can see the similarities in the two structures. And this is now again a girls' school called Villa Teresa on Pedder Road. Beyond which this is the Patiala Palace. It is on top of Malabar Hill. I mean, this is a very sad story. This belonged to a very prominent business family called Keela Chands. This palace is a Art Deco palace built by owned by Maharaja Bhupinder Singh in the 1930s. It was sold in 1940s, but till recently, till 90s, it was one of the most well-maintained residences on Malabar Hill. I have, in one of the, those society magazines, I've seen the photos of it in interior. It has a huge banqueting hall, with a salon with a grand piano and all of that. Sadly, it's disputed among family members, and Orbit Builders has bought it, and there is a talk that it's going to be demolished to construct a multi-story tower. And it is very sad and it is very tragic, but most probably this palace is going to go off very soon. Now I'm going to tell you this very interesting story of Naga sannyasis who turned bankers to the Nizam. You see what used to happen, when you see Kumbh Mela photos, you see a lot of these Naga akhadas running to the beach and, with those talwars and all of that. So these were the Naga Goswami sannyasis, Mahants. Now Goswami Mahants were sannyasi warriors. And during the ancient times, they used to help kings. They used to have these akhadas and they used to help kings in their wars. So, for example, there are reports that they used to help the Nawab of Awadh. They used to help. So, when the king was going, because these were trained warrior sannyasis, they used to take part in battles. And here, even you can see a Mughal official going to a Mahant of a sannyasi, asking for help and all, and they used to be given a lot of chadhava or donations. So what happened was, over time, these Mahants became extremely rich, and they started, like, for example, this is 1800s I'm talking about, right from Jaipur to Kutch to Peshwas at Pune to Hyderabad, they were lending money to all the kings on interest, and they became very rich. Now, one of the most prominent of these sannyasi Gir Rajas, the Goswami Rajas, were the Raja Dhanraj Girs of Hyderabad, who were the bankers to the Nizam. They had given a lot of money for making the Nizam railways and all, for which they were given the title of Raja. This is, Raja Narsingh Girji, which you can see in the picture. Now, Raja Narsingh Girji was not content with just being a banker. So he started the Narsingh Girji mills in Bombay, textile mills in Bombay. And, he also bought the Watson Hotel. I'd shown you that photo of that only hotel, which, Indians were not allowed. So he bought, and the army, because his granddaughter told me that even the Army and Navy building, where the west side is in Kala Ghoda, belonged to them. So these buildings belong to them. So they bought a lot of buildings in Bombay. And his son, Raja Dhanraj Girji, who you can see in this photo, built in between 1935 and 1940, the most opulent, most expensive residential building ever built in Mumbai till then. This was known as Dhanraj Mahal. I mean, it's right next to Gateway of India. It's a very beautiful house. And can you see this? This was the 15,000 square feet penthouse of the Dhanraj Gir family. And it was considered one of the most beautiful apartment buildings in Mumbai at the time. And so this is the Dhanraj Mahal, beautiful construction. I've been inside, I've seen the more murals, and I've seen the quality, even the tiles, and even a lot of very beautiful building here. And what is very interesting is that in 1946, people don't know, few people know that there was a big mutiny. The Indian Navy had mutinied against the British. And, Sardar Patel and Nehru and all, they had to come and they had to put it down because the whole Bombay was in a state of rebellion. In the files of National Archives of India, I found, there was these files after files, Indian naval trial, naval mess, Dhanraj Mahal, naval mess, Dhanraj Mahal, naval mess. So then I asked Raja Dhanraj Girji's daughter that where was the naval mess? So she said that Raja Dhanraj Kiji's penthouse during the Second World War was being used as, this is the penthouse, the top floor, was being used as the naval mess, for the naval trial and all of that. And this, so, it's historic. I think there are going to be some on Amazon Prime and Netflix, there are going to be some series coming up. But this thing is historic, even from Mumbai's point of view. And I think this belongs to, I think the family sold it to the Vedanta, Anil Agarwal of the Vedanta group. But the family owns, apartments in this building and all, quite well maintained. Now we come to this is where the Dhanraj Mahal is. I mean, just people to give you an idea. And then this is the whole Apollo Bandar stretch, which also has very interesting buildings with the royal connection. The first building, right, the second building right next to the Taj, you can see this is the Taj, and this is Anchorage. This was the Mysore house. This was the Mysore guest house. So whenever the Maharaja of Mysore was traveling to Europe and all, they would stay here. And this is the Yuvraj of Mysore, Kanthirva Narasimharaja Vadeyar. And he is the one who passed away in this building in 1940. And he's supposed to have been cremated in the Mahim crematorium. His grandson-in-law was telling me that there is a samadhi in the Mahim crematorium of this thing. And now I have never had the opportunity to go inside the Mahim Hindu crematorium to see the samadhi, but he told me that, I mean, there are records that there is a crematorium, a chhatri of the Yuvraj of Mysore in the Mahim crematorium. So that's another Mysore-Mumbai link. Next to that was Villarville. Villarville, this is the Tarun Tehliani, one of India's top fashion designers. This is where he grew up, but it originally belonged to the princely state of Dharampur. Dharampur was right next to Bansda. It's near Vapi and those kind of areas. Now, unlike Bansda, who were very fond of these beautiful palaces and all of that, now Dharampur family, I've heard crazy stories about them. They were very stingy and very conjuice. Even if they would buy a car, it would be in mint condition. They would never use it. And so this is one of the properties, beautiful houses which they owned. One of the very interesting buildings, is the Bella Court. Now, Bella it belonged to the Nawabs of Bella, who were originally Nawabs of Junnar. And right now, the Darbar Sahib of Kamadia lives in this apartment. I mean, his Nawab of Bella's grandson. And the Bella Kamadia family has a very interesting history. So they are the descendants from Mir Jafar Ali Khan, who was the grandson of the Nawab of Surat. And, Moin Mir, who belongs to the family, has written this fabulous book called Surat, in which he talks about how his ancestor, after Surat was annexed, fought against the British East India Company in the House of Lords. Now imagine this is the same time when Jhansi Ki Rani is fighting, Ghalib is fighting for his pension, Bahadur Shah Zafar is, they're all sending representatives, Satara, Nagpur is sending representatives. None of them were victorious, but this guy was victorious. He got all his properties back, even though the Nawab of Surat title was abolished. The family continues. They are known as the Darbar Sahibs of Kamadia. And this building was bought in 1935 from a British. The Nawab bought it. And the different apartments is where the Kamadia royal family stays. It's almost, we are coming to the end of our talk. One very interesting family was Morvi. Morvi, can you see this Waterloo mansion? Morvi was one of the biggest property owners in Bombay. And they were very smart Gujaratis. They bought their properties through shell companies. There was a United Trading Company. And because to get around to this thing. And they bought some of the most prime properties in Bombay. One of which was this Waterloo mansion, which we have seen just across the road from Regal Cinema. And after Raja Narsinghi, they bought the Watson Hotel as well, in addition to 700 acres of land in Thane and 200 acres of land in Poisar. And what is, I need to, we need to see how the property prices change. I was looking at the old papers of this Waterloo mansion in 1920s. This Waterloo mansion cost 15 lakh rupees, and 700 acres of land in Thane cost 2 lakh rupees. So just imagine, I'm just giving you an idea of how things change and stuff. This is a very fun fact. I had to take a screen grab from a movie. If you've seen a lot of the Hindi movies of 90s, you will keep seeing this bungalow, Shah Rukh Khan movies, and a lot of 90s, you keep seeing this in Akshay Kumar movies and all of that, with a swimming pool and this thing. This is the Mayur Mahal on Juhu Tara Road, and this was named after Maharaja Mayur Dhwaj Singh. And this is the Morvi Beach House, where they came and had fun and all of that. And it still belongs to them, but it is in a very dilapidated shape. Among the last thing is, Gondal. Now, again, Gondal was a very wealthy princely state, but they were very benevolent rulers. The Maharaja was a doctor from the University of Edinburgh, and he made a lot of money in the Bombay Stock Exchange. The state was tax-free. It was one of the most progressive. Gondal is near Rajkot, and it was one of the most progressive states in India. They were very smart. They did not build big palaces. Like, funnily, if you see the palace in Gondal, the bungalow in Bangalore was bigger than their palace in Gondal. But they were like those smart investor Maharajas. So all their money was invested in Bangalore, in Bombay. They bought a lot of buildings. So even now, the main family residence is this Firuzara, which is just opposite Mantralaya, the Korean Airways building, what we call the green color. And all the money very well invested in the London trusts and all of that. And they bought the Opera House, which the family has recently restored for 15 crore rupees. And I must make a special mention of the Gondal royal family, because to spend 15 crore of your own money and restore a heritage building is very commendable. And it's a very thriving, very vibrant, very modern. A lot of fun events happen here. So please, if you're in Bombay, do visit the Opera House. Today I've written, I'm sorry I'm plugging my article, but please, on Live History, I've done a lovely article on the treasures of the Nawabs of Rampur. And the Nawabs of Rampur had this building called Ram Mahal, which was known as Rafat Mahal during that time. Ram Mahal from Rampur and Rafat Mahal. It was originally built by the Rajas of Bilkha and owned by Rampur. And, the late Bombay historian who had great regard for Sharda Dwivedi used to live in this building. And so this was the Rampur house. And not only this, many families had estates in Dadar as well. So Pritham Hotel, which is one of the most important landmarks of Dadar, was one. This is the old building. This is not the new Pritham Hotel. The Pritham restaurant used to be here. And next to it was which is now the new building of the Pritham Hotel. This is the old building of the Pritham Hotel. And if you see, this belonged to the Surgana royal family. Surgana royal family, Surgana was a princely state next to Bansda and Dharampur on the Gujarat-Maharashtra border. And again, Maharaja Pratap Singh Pawar of Surgana was fond of buildings, fond of coming to Bombay, fond of collecting. They have one of the most beautiful collection of Dresden, Meissen porcelain you have seen. I have ever seen in Royal India. And so they had this beautiful house with a penthouse. This, you see, was the Surgana penthouse. So this is where the family lived. And now to conclude, I'm just going to show you, this is how the beautiful city looked like. And this is how we are today. I just want, I don't know if we can see, the old world has gone, the old world charm has gone, beauty has gone. But, by telling these stories, I'm just hoping that, we look, I mean, for example, when I look at Nepean Sea Road, while those buildings and all are there, I always look at Baroda Palace and, I always imagine how the Nizam's palace would have been. I mean, it just, I'm mentally in a different world. So I'm just hoping that, with this talk, I mean, I'm sorry it was a very long talk, but, you will appreciate Bombay city a bit differently, look at it a bit differently, and also think about how we are looking at our heritage. With that, I would like to conclude my talk. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Akshay. It was fascinating, and as you would have seen from the comments over there, the audience has been very, very appreciative. Or the audience themselves need to be appreciated for hanging on, despite the glitch which we had, about which we could not do anything. So thank you. A couple of questions which have come out, Akshay, if I could start on that.
Sure.
Abhishek wanted to know, is Mumbai Chi Bakar available in English, and where can he find it?
Sadly, it is not. I mean, it is very, very, I mean, I just wish somebody does translate Maikavati Chi Bakar in English. If you go online, there are some papers in academia and all which give you a few glimpses of what it contains. But I am really surprised. There has been only one. See, the Bakar is, even when Rajwade translated it in 1800, it's a very old Marathi. It's very difficult to read. So there is only one translation of it available in print form, that also in Marathi. So I would just recommend, I mean, you get snippets in English on web if you just do some web Google search. But please, if anybody wants to do the translation, please do. I will be the one to buy the first copy. So
I suppose that answers Parag's next question too. Is it available on Kindle? I guess the answer is no.
No, very unfortunately, no.
All right, moving on. Lucy wanted to know a little more about Sardar Griya, but one of our other participants gave the details and she was happy with that. Ankur said, Ankur was asking, when you showed the picture of Malabar Hill, could you see the governor's house in the distance?
Yeah.
So it was basically a question from Ankur.
Yes, it was. So, I do not have the old photographs of how the other, the Nepean Sea Road side would have looked like. So, but I was just giving you, this photo is officially called, the Malabar governor's house from the Valkeshwar, whatever the road, I mean, from that side. But yes, the answer is yes. I mean, that was the government house.
There was a request from Swati. Maybe we can take it at the end. She wanted to see the pictures of Mahim Fort and Jai Mahal Palace again. Sure. Maybe we can keep that for later.
Yes. And Swati, I just wanted to say, if you just go to Google and search JAYMAHAL Palace, thankfully, I remember 5-6 years back, I had to struggle to get those images. But now, thankfully, even the royal family has put that one photograph, which is available on Google. So you can search on Google as well. I will show it to you as well. Yeah.
Right. Moving on, Sumanta mentioned that you talked about the royal connection with the Mahikavati kings, and then we went on to the British. So was there any royal connection between the 14th and the 18th century?
So what happened was that it came under, what happened was in the 14th century, one of the generals of Firoz Shah Tughlaq captured Bombay. And what happens is that, it becomes a part of Gujarat. So it doesn't have an independent king as such. There are local tax collectors and, officials here coming, going, from the mainland India to say. But no, there was no royal connection as such. The Sultans of Gujarat ruled here, but there was no royal connection in that time frame till the advent of the British.
Great. Nikunj was confirming that the US Embassy on Nepean Sea Road, the erstwhile embassy, was indeed the Palace of Bakaner. You have answered that.
Yes.
Sumanta wanted to know if there were any residences of the royal families of Jaipur and Bikaner? And if
So-
yes, where were they?
Okay, so Bikaner, I was in two minds, and I always Jaipur. No, Jaipur did not have any residence except the Jaipur house in Delhi. That was the only residence outside Jaipur state ever built by the family, and one in Mount Abu. Bikaner had, no, I wish I could have incorporated that, but I just thought it would be very long. Bikaner had a house called Devi Bhavan on Nepean Sea Road, and that is where Maharaja Ganga Singh of Bikaner died. Let me just cover this. So Maharaja Ganga Singh of Bikaner was a very interesting guy. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So
You're audible.
I hope I'm getting some network problem. Hello? Hello?
You're audible,
Okay,
Akshay.
fabulous. So, I don't need the screen. So, he had a house here, and he was the only Indian signatory to the Treaty of Versailles. And
The first of three questions from Kaivan. Is there any connection between the Markandeshwar temple in Worli and the Scindias?
No, it isn't, because you see, what happened was I went to investigate. I always thought it was a part of the Scindia estate, but I spoke to the trustees and all, and they told me that this was the only bit of, so this land was bought by the Scindias from this Gujarati family, Bhatia family, and this was the only place, this temple is the only thing which they did not sell to the Scindias, while the entire thing from, say, the Mahajiani Dargah till Poonam Chambers was sold to the Scindias. So no, it did not belong to the Scindias.
Kaivan's next question, he wants to know, what is your blog name? Is it different from Live History India?
It is our website. It's our platform, www.livehistoryindia.com. Yeah.
Okay. And his third and final question is would it be correct to say that Bim's Nyayagram would be somewhere approximately where Dadar Parsi colony stays?
Which one, sorry?
Raja Bim's Nyayagram.
No, Naigaon. That is Naigaon.
Okay. So no connection.
Is there Dadar, Naigaon in Dadar, right? If I'm not mistaken.
There is.
Naigaon. Yeah. So Naigram is Naigram is Naigaon. Yeah.
Vinayak wanted to know that he believes that he's heard of Kolhapur Palace in Khetwadi. Would that be correct?
There was, I mean, I did not show the picture of it because there is such an unbelievably ugly building there, standing there right now. But it was not a palace. It was just a big wadi. There was a wadi in which there was a very Maharashtrian style bungalow there. And you see, Chhatrapati Shahu died there, and then it was just sold off. And now a very ugly building has come up, and I couldn't bear to show the photo of such a ugly building to all of you.
Okay. The next question is Janjira House on Woodhouse Road. Did it belong to the Nawabs of Janjira?
Yes, there was the Janjira house. There is a Janjira mansion behind. There's a Janjira mansion behind Majestic Hotel. Is that the one? I presume that's the Woodhouse Road.
That's Woodhouse Road. Yes.
Yes. So after they sold Bella Teresa school, that's where they moved. Yeah.
Okay. Vinayak also wanted to know, where was the Prabhadevi temple?
Prabhadevi temple was there, where it stands now. The only story, it's in one of the lanes next to the Siddhivinayak, but the story goes that, when the invasions happened, during the Tughlaq time, it was hidden for like 200 years in a well. And, one day somebody had a dream and they took out the Devi and they reinstalled the temple. But it was, I think it was there where it stands today.
Inakshi's question was, she wanted you to repeat who was the Indian signatory to the Treaty of
Maharaja Ganga Singh of Bikaner.
Okay. Dipali wanted to know, did any of the public institutions beyond their houses?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question again?
Did any of the royal families establish any public institutions beyond their houses and homes?
See, they had institutions in their states, but one of the most prominent ones which I know in Bombay is the CSMVS, or the Prince of Wales Museum, because the Maharaja of Baroda and the Nawab of Junagadh were one of the biggest donors to the when the Prince of Wales Museum was being built. They contributed a lot of money, and but rest of the time they would build it in their own state. Like for example, when Jamshedji Tata wanted to build the Institute of Science in Mysore, the Maharaja gave him a land, or Sayajirao Maharaj built in the MSU University. So these kind of
And as you mentioned, the Maharaja also contributed to the Royal Alfred Sailors' Home.
yes.
Meenakshi's question again: how did the African kings get to rule in Maharashtra? If you could answer
It's a
it
very
in a-
long story, but I mean, they came during the Bahmani times. They were Siddhis, they were sailors. These hardened sailors from the Somali coast. Others were brought as slaves, and over time they established their own kingdom on the island of Janjira. And I mean, also Sachin. I mean, it's a very funny sounding name, but the kingdom of Sachin was there near Surat. So there were the Nawabs of Sachin and Nawabs of Janjira were the two Siddhi royals of India.
I was also reading somewhere, in fact, just today, that there was a princely state in Gujarat which was a dependency of the Nawab of Janjira. It was
Jafrabad,
called
yes.
Jafrabad. Most unusual to be in the middle, surrounded by all the Rajput and the Hindu kingdoms. A
True.
Nawab ruling right there. I was just reading that today. Of course, lots of complimentary comments that you should write a series, you should write about each of these buildings. So much appreciation. I think that sums up about all the questions that we have. Once again, thank you for the great amount of detail. It was really fascinating, and I'm sure that people can now say with pride that the royal connections of Bombay go much beyond the Royal Opera House, the Royal Bombay Yacht Club.
Thank you so much.
There's one
Nice
last
day.
question asking
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Cochin royal family. Are there any links?
I haven't come across the reference to Cochin, but I did come across references to Travancore. The Maharaja of Travancore owned 7 buildings in Mumbai, including Ramalayam, where Mr. Sharad Pawar used to stay once, where Murli Devra stays right now. So the Ramalayam building belonged to Travancore. There were buildings, called Martand. There was one big building, I can't remember its name, India House or something, just out of
GPO.
opposite GPO, where the razor that it used to be the razor company and all of that. So that was a Travancore building, but these were investments. I've not come across reference to them coming to Bombay, or I mean, they used to come for shopping or something like that, but not a big connection with the city. They were bought as rental income houses and investments.
Great. Once again, many thanks from all of us for your fascinating session. And many thanks to the participants for staying on with so much interest and asking so many interesting questions.